Hello, and welcome back to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, composers, opera singers, and choreographers, my favorite people in the entire universe. I'm really thrilled today to have with us Kate Skarpetowska. Kate began dancing at age 13, and by age 15, she made her Broadway debut at the Minskoff Theatre in a production called Metro, a Polish musical directed and choreographed by prominent Polish artists. She is a graduate of the New York City School of Performing Arts and the Juilliard School. Her prolific career spans multiple aspects of dance. She began as a dancer with Parsons Dance and the Lubovitch Dance Company, performing at many reputable venues such as New York's City Center, the Joyce Theater, Washington, D.C.'s Kennedy Center, and Moscow's Bolshoi Theater. Kate currently works as a freelance choreographer and serves as the Lubovitch Dance Foundation's répétiteur, staging works by Laura Lubovitch and choreographing her own ballets on prestigious companies across the globe, including our own dancers at Richmond Ballet here in Richmond. For her choreographic achievements, Kate was named Dance Magazine's 25 to Watch and was nominated for a New York Dance and Performance Award, the Bessie. She is also an educator, lecturing in contemporary techniques, improvisation, choreography, and repertory at the University of California at Irvine. Kate, we're so pleased to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to begin with the first question that I love asking all of my guests. I love this question because everyone has a different perspective on what they do, and it's just so heartwarming, I think, to hear about how what you do impacts your life and what it means to you. So what does being a dancer and a choreographer mean to you personally?
Well, dance has, fed my heart and soul every day for the past several decades. It defines me. It is who I am and not what I do. It allows me to connect with people, and converse with people on many different levels, artistically and creatively, and on a deep level, really, without words, which is, very special. My whole community is, all dance related individuals. My husband is a dancer or ex-dancer. All my friends are connected to the theater in one way or another, whether they're dancers, ex-dancers, répétiteurs, choreographers, stage managers, lighting designers, costume designers, company managers. It just sort of spans the whole spectrum. And, for me, even as a young dancer, I loved the whole theater experience. I loved the mystery of the theater, and the whole, hustle and bustle of the preparations, for a performance, and then all of a sudden the stillness and the sort of all-consuming, complete focus that from everybody. And this, I think, is, I'm not a religious person, but I feel like this maybe is the closest that I would ever come to a religious experience. So this sort of communion with something greater than ourselves, this presence that sort of envelops all of us in this process in the theater. But I think it really is this sort of collective focus that puts us all in this one place, and allows us to communicate on a such deep level, and it's very, very special. And I love dancers. I think they're capable of uh, extraordinary things, physically, emotionally, creatively, analytically, intuitively, in all sorts of ways, that I feel like dance people kind of operate on a very different plane than just mere mortals, right? So to be in the company of people that think this way, it is very, very important, and I cherish that very much.
Oh my gosh, what a wonderful, wonderful, robust answer. You touched so many amazing points. I just, they say that music is the universal language, but I think the different arts combined, especially, to me, and I'm sure to you, music and dance, just really round that out. That touches our common humanity. And I think the spiritual aspect you mentioned is just so poignant and so spot on. The connection that we feel with other people through the arts, through this communication that really nothing else can touch, in my view. There's just nothing else like it. And I just love your description of that. Just for our listeners, would you explain a little bit more about exactly what a répétiteur does?
A repetiteur stages ballet or a dance, however you want to call it, that already exists. And it's usually somebody else's dance, another choreographer's dance, on a company, on a school, on any group of dancers, really. Um, I became a repetiteur for the Lubovitch Dance Foundation in 2013 after I retired from the stage. And it's a very involved and time-consuming process to teach a dance. I usually begin with studying a lot of different videos of the particular work that I'm going to teach. And then I sort of concentrate on the latest version or the version that Lar Lubovitch prefers. And I teach it from there. But I sort of consult many different videos to do that. And then by the time I start work in the studio, I use the one version as a map and then reference all these others. So, I make notes on patterns and music cues and counts, and I have notebooks for each of his ballets, and I usually update them with each staging as things kind of, evolve at times. And then by the time I begin the work in the studio, I have a very clear picture of the entire ballet as I want to stage it. And when I get ready for rehearsal, I start actually learning the steps. So I'll pick a section of the ballet and for that particular day, and I learn all the steps. I've always had this sort of computer brain and an easy way to like the kind of a photographic memory for steps. So I can work with video, I can learn all the different steps and then teach them. And it's a challenging thing because Lar, for example, works a lot with counterpoint, which you as a musician, can speak to also.
Absolutely.
Where there's at a given time within one of his ballets, for example, there's let's say a minute worth of material of the dance material, but you have 10 different dancers doing slightly something different. It all makes sense as a grouping because it's all of the same family and it all complements each other, except that each dancer does slightly something different. So a 1 minute of material is essentially 10 minutes of material for me to learn and then
Yes.
teach. So and duet, he works a lot with duet work, partnering, very, very complex patterns. And I usually learn both parts, both the traditional male part and the female part, just so that I understand how the weight distribution works and what the grips are exactly. So, and some people sort of give the material, some repetiteurs just give the material and let the, ballet master later clean the work. The way that I teach it, I really like to coach as I teach it so that afterwards, there's very little that needs to be sort of cleaned up, you
Yeah.
could say.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, staging a ballet is a great brain exercise. And I have to say that, after all these years, my brain is like getting sharper even with that and more efficient, which is amazing. The older I get, usually you think it's going to be the other way around, but yeah, it works this way. So.
Yeah. I'm speaking about the age thing. I'm extremely convinced that the more active we are, the more involved we are, the more we challenge ourselves, and the more we're in this growth mindset, the younger we actually get. Because I do think that's a big point, when you're using, your talents. When you're continually developing them, they grow sharper. And I think that's totally credible. So just to kind of clarify, when I think people normally think of a choreographer, for instance, a choreographer or you, others, come and make a ballet on our dancers. It's maybe usually a new work, so the choreographers are working with the dancers themselves, as versus a répétiteur, who takes someone else's work, who may have even been out there for a while, have different versions, and basically interpret what the choreographer intended for that work, or their favorite interpretation of the work. Would that be correct?
I have to say that actually there's not much room for interpretation in staging. So I try
Okay.
to actually take my own ego and my own creative spin away from that process.
Okay.
It's really like you know it's very technical and precise and predictable, and it's kind of like following a manual in a way. And you want to really put yourself in the mindset of the choreographer, in my case, of Laura Lubovitch's mind, right? What were his intentions? What were the things that are important to him, not me, not how I would do it, not how I would interpret it, right? So I really try to focus, take my creative side away from the process, which is very different than when I make my own work, when I create my own work. The process of choreography is a lot more loose and vague in approach, and it's based in discovery rather than this precision, right? So that's, I would say that it is not an interpretation, it is more exact science.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question, but there's something I want to come back to after this. So I would love to move on to your story and the early influences. I really love asking people this question too. You had such an illustrious start, becoming a dancer at age 13 and then making a Broadway debut at age 15. What was that like as a young person, and how did you use that to inform your educational experience at New York City High School of Performing Arts and subsequently at the Juilliard School? And how has that beginning really shaped your life, and the direction that it took you?
Well, it was a wild ride. What did I know at 15? I had limited training, I had limited life experience, limited professional experience, and all of a sudden, I'm on Broadway in one of the biggest, most exciting cities in the world, and it was a life lesson in a way. It was a life lesson in interpersonal relationships and professional relationships and professional conduct, and seeing how things really work and how they are put together. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And later on, after that, I sort of, when I ended up at the High School of Performing Arts and subsequently at the Juilliard School, I realized that what I knew then and how I went on instinct, basically, only, and I was learning on the job kind of, and it was very exciting. I realized that that kind of experience wasn't really for me. Like the musical theater wasn't really something that I was that drawn to. Once I experienced the concert dance and the more abstract way of communicating with the audience, it was and so subsequently my entire career kind of went towards concert dance, not musical theater. So yeah, I don't know. I never really, I rarely work with a narrative, and the whole song and dance thing was, I think I found a lot more depth in, not to disparage that
Oh,
form
no,
at all,
absolutely. Yeah.
but I just found a little bit more depth in concert dance, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I love Broadway musicals too, but I understand what you're talking about as far as the depth of experience. That's why I'm a classical music composer, because I love the way classical music just reaches inside and attaches itself to my soul and my heart and helps me feel things. And I really think it, when I'm doing the work of a different composer, like we do in education and just, the classics, I really feel it's a way for me even to communicate with them, even if they're not alive.
Mhm.
So I fully understand that difference. And I wanted to come back to a question. Um, I think being a répétiteur must be a marvelous thing, but I'm wondering in what ways does that, if you're kind of taking your interpretive aspect out of the picture, how does being a répétiteur feed your artistic soul? Are you able to really step into the choreographer's mind and heart, and does that feed your soul in a different way?
Yeah, it's just a different part of your brain, I think. I enjoy both. Like, so while the process of staging is much more technical and precise and predictable and, and all that, the more looser and based in discovery process of choreographing, and like active thinking on dancers' bodies and, kind of finding a way through, like a dense fog or something, or sculpting something out of nothing, essentially, is very fulfilling on my in my choreographic work. But the staging, that is a lot of discovery too. It's finding ways to give the information to the dancers in front of you, but that is, that I have studied, and I discover new things about Lars' work all the time through my stagings. But it is a different process. So, like, it's just, I feel like I'm just using a different part of my brain, and in a way, you have to, when you're choreographing, you have to keep your brain a lot less crowded,
Yeah.
a little bit more open, so that, especially that in the moment creation on the dancers' bodies, you kind of go on intuition a lot more, rather than with staging, you really are following a particular structure, right, that already exists, and you know what the outcome is going to be. With choreographing a new dance, it's rarely that, even though you do a lot of preparation, or I do a lot of preparation with, music and everything, it's rarely the dance that you set out to make, it's rarely the one that actually comes out, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um because you constantly are ebbing and flowing and moving through the process with this new dance that starts to take shape and starts to exist almost, beside you, right, independently. And as it opens up more and more, you start to follow it, rather than, you know you're making it, right? So it's kind of a strange, very nebulous kind of an experience. And I read some choreographers pre-choreograph a lot of things before they go in the studio with the dancers. I don't do that. I love that wildness kind of thinking in the moment with the dancers right there. And I try, even though I have a lot of information and I kind of set out each day to do, what I want to do, I don't really communicate that to the dancers. I try to keep them somewhat unburdened by what I want, because that opens things up to like brilliant accidents,
Yes.
and things that
Yes.
I wouldn't expect. And that's when, we really find that we are connecting on a very, very deep level,
Hmm.
which is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'd also like to ask you to please tell us a little bit more about Lar Lubovitch. I think everybody knows Balanchine, everybody knows, tell us a little bit more about him, his work, and how did you become his répétiteur?
Well, I danced in his company for many years. We actually connected at Juilliard, where I did some of his work there, and then after I um, stopped dancing for Parsons, I went over to his company, and he and I really connected. There's, many works that I now stage as his repertoire were made on me, which is, which makes the process a little bit easier, right? Because the things that
Of
I
course.
restage when the ballets that were made on me, I have firsthand information of, what that was really like. Staging something from the 80s or the 70s, let's say, I might have done those works, but I wasn't there for the creation, and that's slightly different. Lar is wonderful, I mean, he has worked with everybody, all ballet companies, the biggest ones you can think of all around the world. He has worked with ice dancers. He has worked on Broadway. He has worked obviously in concert dance. He's had this company for a very long time. He was a visual artist. And so, a lot of his works are very intricate and almost like paintings, like strokes of paint, very organic. And you find that interviewing a lot of people that have danced for his company, they'll say that it has been, it's so organic to dance, and it makes total sense for the body, and it just feels good.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very grounded, but it's lyrical at the same time. It's very full and luscious. Um, and I feel very privileged to have to know him and to call him my friend and to stage his works and to have danced for him.
yeah. Quite an honor to have been asked to do that. Yeah,
Indeed.
yeah. Thank you for that. I'd love to. Your bio points to amazing collaborations with top ballet companies, as well as your own works on our dancers here in Richmond, which we've been so fortunate to experience. You've been here multiple times, and it's just amazing every single time. So, you have worked as a répétiteur, a rehearsal assistant, assistant choreographer, and I'd love to hear how you feel about collaboration with these people, and not, and of course the dancers themselves, and also possibly musicians. Would you tell us about that collaborative relationship and what that your experiences and how what you love about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the best things I think about this profession too, is that it's not an insular process, and you're very much a collaborator all the time. I mean, to put any production up on stage, dance production, you are already collaborating with, stage managers and costume designers and set designers, and a lot of times musicians and composers, um uh and so, and the aspect of travel also with that. So you meet people, from all aspects in the organization, right? Like the sponsor and the producer and the people that fund our work also, right? And presenters and all that stuff. So it is, to me, that's a very exciting thing, and I cherish all those relationships that I've made throughout the years in the dance world because of that. Love working with live music is always a thing that it's so exciting, because I feel like it really elevates the experience, for the audience member, for the performers, for all of us that are involved. Um, Unfortunately, it is not done that often in smaller productions. Like obviously, when working with New York City Ballet, we have that ability, or with Vienna State Ballet, or with ABT or whatever. But with smaller companies, it is a huge expense, unfortunately, and we have to deal with that. But I have worked with a lot of composers who are actually, they're sort of family, because they're people that I know, that I have known for many years from Juilliard, and we've mounted several productions at the Joyce Theatre here in New York, with Lyova, with Kenji Bunch, with Paola Prestini, Rina Esmail. These are just names that recently I've worked with. These are composers, young composers. So it is very special, because it adds that other dimension to things, and it contributes to that universal focus that I was talking about before, that there's yet one more element to bring us all together in this in the production. So
Yeah, yeah. I love that you particularly love working, with live musicians because, or you know, our ballet here has done that multiple times, and I love, I mean, the piped in music totally makes sense, especially when you're combining a lot of different sources of music in a single ballet. But there's something really, really special about having live musicians in the pit at the VMFA Leslie Cheek Theater, and with the dancers. And also, I might add, you know, with we did one production that had a live artist creating a work on stage as the dancers were dancing, and it was so amazing because each performance he did a different painting. And just to, you know, if you're lucky enough to go to one more than one performance, you see, you know, the how that works out. And I do that quite often. I love seeing it multiple times. Um, I love collaborating too. I think collaborating, you know, really enriches our own art. You know, I love performing solo, but there's a richness to collaboration that's quite wonderful as well. One of my favorite works that you made here on Our Dancers at Richmond Ballet is Kaleidoscope, and set to the music of Philip Glass. Would you give us some insight about the inspiration for this work and how it came to be?
Yes, so yeah, kaleidoscopic etude it's actually called.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, 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 no worries. The inspiration obviously was a kaleidoscope. And you know, as a I mean, I'm assuming people know what a kaleidoscope is, but just if people don't, people remember it maybe from their childhood as a toy or this optical instrument. There's mirrors in there inside that are sort of angled towards each other, and there's also these colorful tiles that are inside. And when you turn it, you know, this multitude, infinity of patterns really appear, right? And what it does is just sort of, to me, through that action, magical worlds are revealed. And from a standpoint of, you know, creating a dance or organizing a dance around that image, it opened up so many possibilities. And you know, and it just kind of piqued my interest. But also on a human level, you know, when talking about a kaleidoscopic life, that's a life that's sort of ever changing and continually shifting, and it sort of reveals this inner world of an individual that's complete with mixture of thoughts and memories and experiences and feelings and ideas. And so, you know, because dance form is so, it's a human form, right? I mean, there's even though we're not working with a narrative, we're working on an abstract concept that's maybe based in this kaleidoscopic vision or whatever. It's still, there's live bodies on stage. There's inherent drama already there because you have people interacting together and partnering each other and dancing together. So it, both from the design standpoint and from that more human connection, it was very much interesting to me. And yeah, I would love to see that again.
Yeah, I would too. So speaking of, you
Right.
know, I know when choreographers reprise their works at different dance companies, there's an inherent difference because the dancers that are performing it are different as people. They're different artists. But I'm just wondering, in the case of Kaleidoscope or Etude, um, is this aspect even more prominent? Do you, in essence, remake the work just a little bit every time you do it with a different company?
I feel like I always do with any work because y- you know, different dancers have different abilities, right? And so I'm always there to collaborate with the people that are right in front of me. So if something doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, but it did in a previous staging, then I'm happy to change it and alter it. You know, I'm not talking about huge edits, but
Sure.
you know, things that will help the performer feel better in the material.
Uh-huh.
I love that. I think that, you know, it's in a live form. It only exists in the moment, right? It's like without it being done, it's somewhere there on tape. I don't know, but it doesn't really exist until it exists on
Yeah.
bodies in front of us. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to, you know, absolutely make small changes to help the performers.
Yeah, I love that aspect, but I guess I was thinking, especially with Etude, just the nature of that work, is reflective of growth and change, especially as, we go through life. And I'm just curious about the idea of maybe um, that work kind of growing and changing in the same fashion. I don't know. It's totally your call. Obviously, you're the
Yeah,
choreographer.
yeah, no. I think it's, it is what it is. I think
Yeah,
it will grow and change with, absolutely, but as any other work does too, I think,
sure,
with
sure.
the next group of performers that
Yeah.
do it. Yeah,
And that's the beauty of it. I really
yeah,
love that aspect.
yeah.
Is there another work or two that you'd like to talk about? I'd love to hear just maybe some of your other ideas for works you've done and talk a little bit about the impetus behind those and why you particularly chose to do these works.
Um, so usually for me, the the latest work is the one that I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
So uh, currently, I'm working on this Bach triptych,
Ah,
and it's
that
kind of
sounds
an interesting,
fascinating.
yeah, it's an interesting process because it's triptych, as in, so three different works, three separate works that can be done, separately, and they have been done separately. Um, but they can also be done consecutively, as one big project. So the first one was made in 2021 on Minskoff Ballet from San Francisco. It's called the Sextet, and it had the music was Violin Concerto Number 1 in A minor, and the third part, so that's the first part of it. The third part of it also already exists. It was made in 2023 on a company in Salt Lake City, Utah, called Repertory Dance Theatre. And that one is called Octet in Situ. And that was done to a selection of Goldberg variations that were arranged actually for a string quartet by a French composer, Francois Maimoun. Um, and that has, the first piece with Smuin was done on point, with a point shoe. The third piece of it was done in flat, or in sax actually, and there's a set that's part of it also. And now the second part, which is the middle part, is in the making as we speak, and it's called Quatuor Plus, and it's made on Perry Dance, Contemporary Dance Company here in New York City. I started it this year, so they're kind of made every 2 years, as it.
Okay.
But it will be premiered in 2026. And that one is a mix of pieces. Two of them are, so there's two cantatas that were arranged for piano. And then there's three movements of French Suite Number 2 in C minor. And so all of them have a through line. Like I said, I don't work with narrative a lot, but there is sort of a through line between them. Whether it's by design. It's also interesting that it's like three different groups of dancers, three different costume designers, and set designers, three different lighting designers, but somehow they're influenced, right? So the first one that existed is Sextet. The other two are influenced by the very first one. The
Sure.
last one is certainly influenced by both the Sextet and the Octet. So um, and when I spoke to the costume designer for this latest one, the Quatuor, she said that she found it really intriguing to design costumes already with others, existing for the other two works. So um, anyway, I love Bach. I love playing with his music. I think his music is timeless, and I think he makes a great dance partner. And so I've been having a lot of fun with this. And another thing that's somewhat curious about this whole project is that this each one of these dances was made with, some sort of struggle within the company. Like with Smue Ballet, this was right after, we just like came out of COVID, isolation.
Right.
And so that was the challenge. With the octet, there was some internal struggles within the company, the Repertory Dance Theater, with personnel inside, having to do with, some abusive relationships within the company. So, and the company kind of coming in together to sort of, find their world and their community again. With this Perry dance, I'm not sure what their struggle is yet, but I don't wish to struggle on anybody, but anyway, it is a kind of a
they help
fun,
us grow, so maybe
yeah,
it
exactly. So yeah, I mean, anyway, so this is it. So I I would love to see the three done together at some point by one group of people. I'm not sure if that would be possible or not, but
I think you should do it here in Richmond.
I think that would be wonderful.
Just to give a plug there.
I think, yeah, pitch it to Ma, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I would probably do that. Well, I love how you speak about your work, and of course, I love that you love Bach. I love Bach as well. It's funny, when I think sometimes when we're pianists and we're in school, and we play things like Bach, and it seems to be such a drudgery, and the more we play it, the more we get drawn in and we discover so much about it. And the fascinating thing to me is, Bach never gave any articulations or dynamics or anything like that. And yet there's so much inherently there.
Yes.
And the more you work with his music, the more you get that, and the more you start to understand. And it is the most fascinating thing to me. Yeah, I just wrote a modal fugue with the piece starts with the third movement of this piece starts with a modal fugue, and the middle part is has a B section that's more romantic and lyrical, and then the last part is more of a Baroque fugue. It's not quite there, but it certainly evokes that. So he certainly is having an influence on my compositions. Yeah. Okay, I'm always curious. I love to hear people answer this question. I feel like our world is going through a huge change, and more so than usual. I feel like we're in very, very evolutionary times. And I'm just wondering what your view is on the future of dance. There's so many people talking about, classical music is a dying art, dance is a dying art. I don't personally view it that way. I actually feel that there's a resurgence, especially, from young people. But I'd be interested to see, with your experience as a dancer and a choreographer, how do you view that?
I think, dance is ever evolving. So, as are dancers, right? Like when you look at classical ballets, full-length ballets, they're not what Maya Plisetskaya was. In fact, if Maya Plisetskaya was the kind of dancer she was, she probably wouldn't get hired these days, right?
Yeah.
So even though she was a huge star, but dancers have evolved so much. Also, the technique has evolved so much. We as human beings in society have evolved so much, and as dancers we're informed by how we live and our community and everything. So I think even those classical works, those full-length ballets, I think they are still evolving, right? Even though it's the same sort of structure, you get edits by contemporary choreographers, but they are still evolving. You do also get complete new takes on these ballets, on these traditional
Absolutely, they are
ballets.
reimagined quite often.
Right,
And
right.
I've heard of that, from other choreographers I've talked to, and it's just very exciting to me.
Yes, yes, and completely different language, right? I mean,
Mhm.
even the story, when told from a different angle, from a different perspective, changes. The language changes. So I think these reinventions. And when you look at classical musics too, you see influences from one composer to another, right? Like, 100
Absolutely.
years
That's
later.
always been, yes.
Yeah, exactly. One studies with the other. We're influenced by what we know, about what we process through our creative
Sure.
mind, bodies, and everything. So I think, it will continue to evolve. There's so many aspects. There's so many languages really out there in dance, and I think it's wonderful. The more the better. The more perspective, the more uh looks at intimate worlds of a person from this background, that background, this perspective, the other perspective. I think it's super important, and I think we need to continue to investigate and support artists in their investigation of new works. And as audience members, going to the theater, supporting these works. I think it's wonderful. I go to see anything and everything that I possibly can.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to live in New York City, where, especially now, September, October, this beginning of the season, there's so
Yes.
much happening. I'm in the theater twice, 3 times a week, different theaters, running around the city, seeing what's out there. What are people talking about, how
Yeah.
they're influenced by, by climate, but by social issues, by politics, by, or just, absolute abstract ideas too,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And I'm a lifer. I'm a super dance fan. I think it's I root for dance. I every time I go to see a performance, I want it to succeed. I want it to be good. I want to learn something from it. I want to be moved by it. It's important in our lives to have it.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think that is going to be the lifeline, honestly. And yet, part of me, and I do feel this will be true too. There's a reason the classics are the classics because they speak to all time. They have the same message or their messages are just as relevant today as they were when they were created. And I think that classic quality, I hope it will remain. I'm very excited that. We're going to be doing Giselle, this year, and I love that we're doing that. And I guess just a few years ago we did Snow White, and it was one of the biggest draws that we had. I mean, it was sold out immediately, big production, just traditional story ballet, and so it was just of course Swan Lake is a classic that everybody loves too. So it makes my heart happy, to see that happening, to see the appeal still there. But I also really love and intrigued by all the evolution and the different, for instance, the combination of modern dance with the classical underpinnings is really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, there's never enough time. So I'm sure we'll just have to have you back at some point in the future. But thank you so much for taking time out of your hugely busy schedule to talk to us today. I hope everyone has enjoyed this wonderful, wonderful talk with Kate. And stay tuned. And we have a new episode of Talking Shop dropping every other Tuesday. And you can go to lisaruthmusic.com and sign up on my email sign up and get notified in advance before everyone else when that's going to happen. And so we'll see you next time on Talking Shop.